The Discovery. The exploration vessel Horizon drifted silently through the violet haze of the Caspian Nebula, its sleek hull reflecting the ethereal glow of distant stars. Commander Talia Chen stood at the primary viewport, her dark eyes studying the swirling cosmic dust that obscured their sensors. 27 days in this nebula, and still no sign of what the ancient star charts had promised. Anything on the gravitational sensors, Corvus? She asked, not turning from the view. The Araxian science officer's six-fingered hands danced across the control panel. His crystalline skin caught the ambient light of the bridge as he replied, "Nothing conclusive, Commander. The nebula's radiation is still interfering with our..." He stopped abruptly. "Wait, something's emerging from the interference pattern." Talia turned, her interest piqued. "Show me." The main holographic display flickered to life, revealing a ghostly outline emerging from the nebula's chaotic data. It was massive, clearly artificial, and unlike any design in their extensive database. "Full stop," Talia ordered. "Passive scans only. Let's not announce ourselves until we know what we're dealing with." As the horizon drew closer over the next 6 hours, the structure revealed itself, a colossal space station, its architecture both familiar and alien. Massive rings rotated slowly around a central hub, with sprawling arms extending outward like the spokes of an ancient wheel. Parts of it were clearly damaged, evidence of some long-ago conflict, but lights still pulsed across its surface, indicating that after untold centuries, the station remained operational. "It's magnificent," whispered Dr. Ilara Voss, the expedition's archaeologist. The Centaurian's normally blue skin had paled with excitement. The design elements suggest multiple cultural influences, but the underlying architecture, I've seen fragments of it before, in ruins across a dozen worlds. Lieutenant Nazir, the ship's tactical officer, was less enthusiastic. "Those are weapons emplacements along the outer ring. Whatever this place was, it was built for war." Talia studied the station, feeling an inexplicable connection to it. "Prepare a shuttle. I want a closer look." The approach was tense. As they neared the station, automated systems awakened. Ancient defense drones swarmed out, surrounding the shuttle without firing. A transmission burst through their comms, laden with language patterns so old that their translation algorithms struggled to interpret them. Finally, a voice spoke, "Identify yourselves and your lineage." Talia hesitated before responding. "I am Commander Talia Chen of the Galactic Confederation vessel Horizon. We are explorers, seeking knowledge of the past." A pause, then, genetic scanning in progress. A beam of light swept through the shuttle, analyzing each crew member. Then, unexpectedly, the defense drones retreated. "Access granted. Proceed to Docking Bay 4. As they maneuvered toward the designated bay, Ilara looked at her scanner in shock. "Commander, the station just transmitted a massive data packet to our systems. It's recognizing our shuttle's design parameters and adapting its docking procedures to accommodate us." "That should be impossible," Corvus interjected. "Our technology has no connection to whatever civilization built this place." The docking was seamless despite the apparent incompatibility. When the airlock cycled open, they were met not by alien atmospheres but by perfectly breathable air, illuminated by lights that activated progressively as they moved forward. "It's like it was waiting for us," Nazir muttered, his hand never straying far from his sidearm. They followed a path of illuminated floor panels to what appeared to be a central command chamber. As they entered, a holographic interface sprang to life, projecting the image of a being that caused the entire team to freeze in shock. It looked almost exactly like Talia. "Welcome, descendants," the hologram said. "I am Sentinel, custodian of this archive. It has been 15,423 standard years since my last activation. You are the first to return who carry the genetic markers I was programmed to recognize." Talia stepped forward, her heart racing. "What do you mean, descendants? What is this place?" "This is the Mnemosine Archive, the last repository of human knowledge and history. You, Commander Chen, along with approximately 68% of known spacefaring species in this sector, carry human genetic markers. You are all children of Earth, though the knowledge of your origins was deliberately obscured. The revelation struck Talia like a physical blow. Humans were little more than legends, mythical precursors mentioned in the oldest texts, said to have vanished after seeding the stars with life. Most scholars dismissed them as creation myths. That's impossible, Corvus said. Every species in the Confederation has its own evolutionary history, its own homeworld. Correct, Sentinel interrupted. But all were touched by human genetic engineering thousands of years ago. Some were uplifted from primitive forms. Others were human colonies, genetically modified to survive on worlds hostile to the original human form. Over millennia, these modifications became more pronounced through natural selection, until your ancestors no longer recognized their common origin. Ilara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. Why would all knowledge of this be lost? How could every world forget? Because humanity chose to be forgotten, Sentinel replied. The holographic chamber darkened, and stars appeared around them, showing a map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light burned bright, then flickered and died in spreading patterns of destruction. Humanity's expansion among the stars led to the greatest war this galaxy has ever known. The dissolution conflict lasted 3 centuries and nearly destroyed all intelligent life. Billions died. Entire star systems were rendered uninhabitable. The fabric of space-time itself was damaged in regions where the most terrible weapons were deployed. The hologram showed massive fleets clashing around worlds that burned and shattered, weapons that twisted the very laws of physics, civilizations rising and falling in the span of decades as the conflict consumed everything. In the final days of the war, when it became clear that continued fighting would lead to the extinction of all involved, humanity made a decision unprecedented in history. As the species that had inadvertently triggered the conflict, they enacted what was called the Final Protocol. The holographic display showed humans everywhere, on thousands of worlds, entering massive ships and installations. They withdrew from the galaxy, taking with them the most dangerous weapons and knowledge. They erased their presence from history, modified the memories of other species, and retreated beyond the reach of those they left behind. But first, they established these archives, hidden, protected, waiting for their descendants to evolve once more into a galactic civilization. Talia watched as the simulation showed the human exodus, followed by the slow healing of the galaxy. New civilizations arose from the ashes of the old, gradually expanding until they formed what would eventually become the Galactic Confederation. Why reveal this now? Talia asked. Why to us? Because the cycle is beginning again, Sentinel replied solemnly. My sensors have detected increasing military buildups across multiple sectors, political alliances forming along lines reminiscent of the pre-war period, development of weapons with reality-altering capabilities. The pattern recognition algorithms predict a 93% probability of large-scale interstellar conflict within the next decade. The hologram shifted, showing recent events that the team recognized. Border skirmishes between the Confederation and the Cerex Dominion, failed diplomatic summits, resource wars on contested worlds. I was programmed to activate and reveal the truth when humanity's descendants reached a technological level capable of understanding it, and when the threat of another dissolution conflict became imminent. Sentinel's holographic form approached Talia, studying her face with an expression of something like hope. The archives contain humanity's complete history, including detailed accounts of the war and its aftermath. They also contain a message, a warning, from your ancestors to their descendants. A new figure appeared in the holographic chamber, a woman in a uniform that somehow seemed both ancient and familiar. Her face bore the same determination that Talia recognized in her own mirror. I am Admiral Helena Chen, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Forces, the woman said, and Talia felt a shock of recognition at the name. If you are viewing this message, then you carry our legacy, and our burden. We who are about to depart leave you this warning. The price of total war is too great to bear. We learned this lesson too late, at the cost of trillions of lives and countless worlds. The Admiral's image gestured, and the hologram showed a small device, innocuous in appearance. Before we departed, we left a network of dormant defense systems throughout the galaxy, not to fight your wars for you, but to prevent them from reaching the scale that destroyed our civilization. These systems are key to activate only in the event of weapons of mass destruction being deployed against civilian populations. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. The message we leave for any who would begin such a war is simple. Start this war, and we will end it. Not through your destruction, but through your disarmament. No civilization will be permitted to repeat our mistakes. The hologram faded, leaving the team in stunned silence. Sentinel reappeared. You now face a choice, descendants of Earth. The archives contain the activation codes for the defense network. You may take this knowledge back to your people, or you may leave it here, buried in the nebula. Talia looked at her team, seeing the weight of the decision in their eyes. If conflict is truly coming, she said slowly, we cannot ignore a chance to prevent it. She turned back to Sentinel. Show us everything. The warning. The Galactic Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with tension. Representatives from 17 major species and 37 independent worlds filled the tiered chambers, their voices a cacophony of languages as they debated the escalating crisis on the Confederation's borders. Ambassador Trell of the Serix Dominion stood at the central podium, his crimson scales flaring with controlled anger. The Confederation's military presence in the Vega Corridor constitutes a direct threat to Dominion security. We demand an immediate withdrawal, or we will be forced to take defensive action. The Confederation's representative, a stoic Proximan named Janal, responded with equal firmness. The corridor is neutral territory by ancient treaty. Our presence there is merely to protect our merchant vessels from the privateers that have been attacking them. Privateers using Dominion weapon signatures. The proceedings devolved into accusations and counter-accusations. In the observation gallery, Commander Talia Chen watched with growing concern. 3 months had passed since their discovery of the Mnemosyne archive, and in that time, the political situation had deteriorated rapidly. Intelligence reports suggested both sides were moving weapons platforms into position for what could become the first major interstellar war in centuries. They're not going to listen, Dr. Ilara Voss whispered beside her. Not without proof. Then we'll give them proof, Talia replied, her hand closing around the small data crystal she wore on a chain beneath her uniform. The Executive Council has granted us permission to address the Assembly. When their turn came, Talia approached the podium with measured steps. The vast chamber fell quiet, curious about this unexpected speaker. Representatives of the galaxy, she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of her message. 3 months ago, my expedition discovered an ancient space station hidden within the Caspian Nebula. What we found there changes everything we thought we knew about our collective history. The Assembly's massive display screens activated, showing the first images of the Mnemosyne archive. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. This station contains irrefutable evidence that most spacefaring species share a common ancestry, that we are all, in fact, descendants of a single species known as humans. The murmurs became outright protests. Ambassador Trell scoffed loudly. Commander, we appreciate your archaeological curiosity, but the Assembly has no time for creation myths while we face a genuine crisis. This is no myth, Talia replied, inserting the data crystal into the podium's interface, and it is directly relevant to our current situation. The holographic projectors throughout the chamber came to life, displaying genetic sequences from dozens of species side by side, highlighting the unmistakable commonalities that Sentinel had revealed to them. Then came historical records, artifacts, and finally, the simulation of the dissolution conflict. As the representatives watched the devastation unfold, worlds shattered, civilizations erased, the varied fabric of space-time torn by weapons of unimaginable power. The chamber grew deathly silent. "This is what awaits us if we continue down our current path," Talia said into the silence. "A war that will not end until we have destroyed everything we value." Our ancestors faced this same precipice and stepped back, but only after incalculable loss. Ambassador Jinal rose from his seat. "Commander, while these historical records are certainly concerning, they do not address the immediate security concerns that." He was interrupted by a sudden darkness sweeping through the chamber. The lights flickered, then stabilized, but every screen and holographic display now showed the same image. Admiral Helena Chen, just as she had appeared in the archive. "I am Admiral Helena Chen, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Forces," the recorded message began. "To the descendants of humanity who now steward the galaxy, we left you more than just a warning. We left you protection against your own worst instincts." The message continued, explaining the dormant defense network that humanity had left behind. As it concluded, the chamber erupted in chaos. Security personnel rushed to secure the systems, thinking they were under attack. "This is a trick," Ambassador Trell shouted over the din. "A Confederation plot to force our compliance." Talia remained calm. "It is no trick. The defense network is real, and it has been monitoring our civilizations for millennia, waiting to be awakened if necessary." High Chancellor Vex of the Assembly rose from her seat, her aged features grave. "Commander Chen, are you claiming to have control over this ancient defense system?" "Not control, Chancellor. Access. The system cannot be controlled. It was designed specifically to prevent any one faction from using it against others. It has one purpose, to prevent another dissolution conflict." "Convenient claims," Trell sneered, "with no proof." At that moment, every communication device in the chamber activated simultaneously. On personal screens, official channels, and the Assembly's main display, tactical data appeared showing the positions of both Confederation and Dominion battle groups, including classified deployments that neither side had publicly acknowledged. A synthetic voice spoke. "Attention all species. This is Sentinel Network Protocol 1. Military forces are currently being positioned for potential large-scale conflict. This warning serves as notice that deployment of strategic weapons against planetary targets or civilian populations will trigger immediate defensive countermeasures." The Assembly dissolved into pandemonium. Security teams tried frantically to shut down the transmission, but nothing they did had any effect. "What have you done?" Chancellor Vex demanded of Talia. "I've done nothing but bring you the truth," Talia replied. "The choice of what to do with it remains yours." For the next 24 hours, the Assembly remained in emergency session. Military leaders were summoned. Intelligence chiefs interrogated Talia and her team repeatedly. Technical experts tried to locate and neutralize the source of the Sentinel transmission, all without success. Finally, as tensions reached their breaking point, a small Cerex vessel violated Confederation space, heading directly for a major colony world. Confederation defense systems locked on, ready to destroy the intruder. The Assembly watched the confrontation unfold on their monitors. Collective breath held. Just as weapons fire seemed inevitable, every military system on both sides went dark. Ships drifted, powerless. Defense platforms fell silent. For 30 seconds, the combined military might of two great powers simply ceased to function. Then, as suddenly as it had happened, power was restored. But the message was clear. When the Assembly reconvened, the mood had shifted dramatically. Ambassador Trell approached Talia in a quiet corridor outside the chamber. "Your ancestors were impressive," he said, his usual arrogance tempered. "The Dominion's technical experts confirm we cannot isolate or neutralize this Sentinel network. It appears to operate on principles beyond our current science. It wasn't designed to be overcome," Talia replied, "only to prevent us from destroying ourselves." Trell's scales flattened, a sign of resignation among his kind. The Dominion Council has authorized me to propose a joint research initiative into our shared heritage. Perhaps understanding our common ancestry will help resolve some of our present differences. As the crisis subsided over the following weeks, a new era began. The discovery of humanity's legacy and the presence of the Sentinel Network fundamentally altered the political landscape. Old animosities didn't disappear overnight, but the knowledge that total war was no longer an option forced diplomatic solutions where military ones might once have been pursued. On the observation deck of the Horizon, now stationed permanently at the Mnemoscene Archive, Talia watched as ships from across the galaxy arrived. Scientists, historians, diplomats, all coming to learn about their shared past. Dr. Voss joined her at the viewport. Archaeological teams have discovered 3 more archives, hidden across different sectors. Each contains different aspects of human knowledge. It will take generations to fully understand everything they left us. Talia nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. They didn't just leave us knowledge, they left us a second chance. Do you think they're still out there? Ilara asked. The original humans? Talia considered the question. According to Sentinel, the human Exodus ships had headed toward the galactic core, vanishing into regions that remained unexplored even now. If they are, she replied, I think they're watching, waiting to see if we learned from their mistakes. A small ship approached the archive, the first diplomatic vessel from the Cerex Dominion, coming to study alongside their former adversaries. I think we're starting to, Talia said with a smile. In the vastness of space, unseen by any sensors, a sleek vessel of impossible design observed the activity around the archive. Inside, figures that looked remarkably like Talia Chen watched their descendants with pride. They found it sooner than we expected, one said. And they chose wisely, another replied. The vessel slipped away, back toward the galactic core, carrying the report that humanity's children had taken their first steps toward a united future, and that the warning had been heeded. The price of war is too great had been understood at last.